Folks, welcome inside the Parisi Palace here. This is a live Facebook edition of the Jake Feinberg Show, and joined here by Danny Krieger. Welcome, my man.
Well, good to be here. I'm a fan.
Thank you. Tell me, just before, just to toot my own horn, what do you get off about the Jake Feinberg Show?
I always dig reading about musicians. I'm like the biggest fan in the world. I'm still people. When I met James Brown, it was like mind blowing because it was James Brown.
Walking down the street in Cincinnati, going to King Studio.
No, actually, I have a great. You got a minute? I'll tell you this.
Do it, man. That's why we're here.
All right, I was playing with Sam Taylor. If you're from Tucson, you probably remember Sam Taylor. He's actually the person that moved me up to Tucson from LA. Anyway, I digress.
It's okay.
I was playing with Sam at this place in Reseda in Los Angeles. What the hell was the name of it? I think it was called the Country Club, and we were opening for James Brown, and it was New Year's Eve, and we had another gig afterwards, so we couldn't stay and see James Brown. Anyway, we played our set, and I said, I'm not leaving without meeting James Brown. So me and the trombonist go up to his room, and he's got, like a bodyguard dude stand, but he's got like his hair in curlers, and he's like, I came in and I said, Mr. Brown, it's such an honor to meet you. I'm a huge fan, blah, blah, blah. And he was very nice. He said, I really enjoy what you boys were doing. And I said, now, we can't stay and see the show. We got another gig. And he said, well, now, I know that it's New Year's Eve, but I hope you boys won't be drinking and driving. And I thought, man, sage wisdom from James Brown.
JB, baby.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, a lot of cats already... Can you just play what you feel? I mean, let's play a tune, because people are calling out for you to play some more. Whatever you want to get out of your system today. We're joined by a master here, Danny Krieger. Transplant from L.A. You were born in L.A.
No, I was born in New York. Born in New York.
In the city or in Long Island?
I was born in New York City.
Oh, okay.
My father was an actor. I lived in New York until I was about 10. Then I moved to Los Angeles. I lived most of my life in Los Angeles.
We were talking earlier about rye cooter.
Yeah.
We're talking about, that country flavor, but, cats that came from Tulsa like Keltner, that country feel. You play something for the audience that you got? That comes that inspires you?
Sure. Let's see. Would you tell me what time? Train running through this town. What doggone my bad luck's falling. Hey, hey, your train running through this town. Through this town, through this town. Gonna laugh and talk as long as she's around. One goes south at 8, other goes north at 9. Doggone, my bad luck's falling. Hey, hey, one goes north at 9. North at 9, north at 9. Got an hour to spend with that long-haired girl of mine. Woo! Down, gonna act like a preacher and slip from town to town. I'm going to act like a preacher, slip from town to town. I'm going to act like a preacher, slip from town to town.
great guy and a great player despite his awkward appearances. That's Mikey Phobian chiming in. But, Danny, let me ask you, can you just talk about your concept? I was talking to Chuck Goldschmidt. No, it's all right. It's technology. We're going to turn that phone off immediately.
Stop it. Shut up. I had it with you. There.
Good.
Sorry about that.
We wouldn't have had that problem back then. But I've talked to cats who have been literally playing rhythm guitar their whole lives. They never felt comfortable. Maybe they tried to improvise, but it never really worked, and they just settled into that rhythm bag. Can you talk about your concept of improvisation and where your ears, how you really learned to improvise?
Well, you know, I'm lazy, so I don't play the way I wish I could play. I wish I could finger pick. You know, one of my favorite players is Jerry Reed, who, you know, people know him from Amos Moses and novelty songs, but he's one of the greatest players.
What made him a great player? I've seen his records around.
Funky, syncopated.
Funky.
I mean, he had a snap. You know, people can play his stuff, but it never sounds right because there was a tone that he got because of his attack. And that's, you know, Albert King has that thing. There's certain players that you can identify in the first 8 bars, you know, and it's usually because of their attack. Ry Cooder and Jerry Reed is one of those guys. He thinks of these great, beautiful, and funky chord progressions, and he was amazing, great player.
But in terms of you beg, borrowed, and steal from those cats. But how did Krieger find his own sound?
Well, in the beginning, it was the blues guys. You know, I mean, when I first started playing, you know, other than strumming, you know, Where Have All the Flowers Gone, I started playing, you know, trying to actually play stuff. I was getting records and playing them and, you know, pick the needle up and try and play, pick the needle up and try and do it. And, you know, in the beginning, it was, you know, the skinny British white guys before I heard Albert King doing Born Under a Bad Sign, I heard Cream.
Right.
And so there was that whole thing. I loved Cream, I loved Hendrix, I loved Clapton at that time. They were all great players, you know, and then these guys like Ry Cooder and J.J. Cale that were more subtle. You were talking about rhythm. There's, you know, guys like Nile Rodgers and Freddie Green that, you know, never play a single note, and they're, you know,
Basie's guitarist,
I mean,
Freddie
that
Green.
guy is ridiculous.
Right, the funkiest dude.
Oh man, you know, and so I try and steal from all that stuff.
Did you? I just for the record, was it one of those things where you would look at the Cream album, they'd be covering a tune, Born Under a Bad Sign, you say, oh, that's actually Freddie King's the original composer of that, or was it through interviews that when they said we were inspired by the original blues artists?
It was actually Steve Cropper, but yeah, I mean, I would do that. That was when, you know, we were talking earlier about like the days when I would look at the back of album covers to see if I was going to buy the record, you know,
right? Who's
on this record? Who wrote this song? You know, that was.
My larger point is, would we have ever discovered the original the blues masters without the influence of the skinny British cats?
Probably not. You know, I mean, the Beatles. It's funny. I just finished reading another. I'm a huge Beatle fanatic. I mean, that's another thing. You know, I hate musical snobism. You know, I mean.
You want to define that?
Well, I used to work at this restaurant in L.A. and there was one of the waitresses that worked there. Her father was a really famous. Oh hell, Bill Watros. You know.
I'm friends with him on Facebook. A serious bone player. Serious bone player. But maybe.
But he would throw her records away.
What?
He would, like, you know, this is crap. You know,
Watros is gonna be watching this, man.
I'm sorry, dude. Melody, I love her.
So you're talking about like straight ahead. If it wasn't straight ahead jazz, it was not.
It's like, you ever read interviews with Artie Shaw?
Not a ton, no. Well, I don't read. I mean, I talk. I don't.
And I don't know jazz, you know. Yeah. But I remember I got so angry with him reading this interview. He's talking about and these bonehead singers that are walking around with all these lyrics in their head, and you know, this stuff isn't jazz. This is, you know, pop, and just that attitude that if it's not a certain, you know, Buddy Rich. I watched a thing recently where he was ragging on country music where. It's, you know, it's 2 chords, blah, blah, blah. Well, I'd rather listen to I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry than Lush Life.
Right.
You know, I think it's a better song.
But I mean, here's one of the things. Like when I put up posts from these interviews, radio interviews, like with Eddie Henderson about the. Can you talk about seeing the M1 Bishi band? And where there was no snobism at all. What did you recognize about it? Not that you necessarily incorporated anything sonically into your own bag, but there was a respect. It wasn't like you were just like, I can't understand it and I resent it. That was not there.
That was all. There was the first real band that I was in, a band called Hanley. We went on the road in 1969. There was a player in that band, a keyboard player named Greg Matheson, who since has done a bunch of stuff. He's one of the most incredible musicians I've ever known.
Sure.
And he was a jazz player, and we were a rock band, and this was a whole new thing for him. But he introduced me to this whole. It was ridiculous when he first came to audition in the band. He was so much better than any of us. But we were like, "Who do you like?" He said, "Well, I dig Miles." And we were like, "Oh, Buddy Miles."
Buddy Miles.
You know, this was 1968 or whatever. And I knew nothing about, and he started turning me on to jazz. And one of the, he was telling me about Miles, the band with Herbie and Wayne Shorter and
Tony
Ron
Williams,
Carter, Tony Williams. And I started listening. And at first, it just was, I could appreciate it, but I didn't know what was going on. I still don't. I'm not a jazzer. But we went to the Lighthouse to see the M1 Bishi band. And it was one of the most amazing musical things I've ever seen.
Why did it blow your mind?
They played together. Yeah. They were, talk about listening to each other. They were like one unit, and they were funkier than, I always get, they had a syncopation thing going that was just, I remember Greg and I just giggling throughout. It was one of those, when something is that great, you just start laughing. It's like, I can't believe this.
Was it also the fact that the rhythm section was playing melodically? Everyone was keeping their own internal time, and it was an acoustic band. I mean, there was something really, you listen to the records and it translates pretty well on record, but I can't imagine seeing that in a live setting.
Well, for one thing, it wasn't a totally acoustic band. He would play Fender Rhodes, and was it Buster Williams? It was.
Yeah. Buster hated the electric bass, but he played it for that.
But he did play. They went back and forth, I can't tell you what it was except that it worked. That it affected me. It's one of those things that you sort of can't describe. Why is a melody a great melody? You can't go, well, it's these chords, because there's different songs that have those chords and it doesn't work.
I was going to ask you a question. No. Joined here by a legendary player. People loving the feedback here on Facebook Live. Keep it coming in. Could you play a Tim Hardin song? A little bird whispered in my ear that you hung with that cat, and I've hung with Maruga Booker and Glenn Moore towards the end when Hardin was really off the rails. And I wanted you to, Tim Hardin, though, Glenn Moore, the bass player from Oregon, told me that Tim Hardin could look at you and sing a song about what you were feeling inside without ever knowing you. Okay, he could tap, and I know geniuses are all over the place. So can you talk about your relationship with Tim, and then also maybe you could riff on a tune?
I knew Tim, the last year of his life. We were both really not in good shape. But he was, aside from the fact that he was such a great songwriter, he was such a soulful singer. I mean, he's one of my favorite singers, and I don't think he gets enough credit for that.
I agree.
And he sat in a couple times with Sam Taylor's band when I was playing with Sam in L.A. Stayed over at my house a couple of times. I ended up playing a tribute after he died at the Troubadour with a lot of great players. But he was this wonderful cat that was all fucked up. He was... I don't know. I didn't know him well enough to go into the psychology of maybe he scared himself because he was so big at a rather young age, and people like Dylan were looking up to him. I don't know.
Were you at Woodstock? Because there was a concert where he could not perform, so they had to have Jimmy keep going. But if there's a tune that you could pay respect, even if it's an original of yours, I want to pay some respect to Tim Hardin, because I'll tell you, the guy, that dude had Alphonse Mouzon, rest in peace, the drummer on his albums. He had studio cats in there, and I just think a gifted, tortured, melodic genius, in the same vein as someone like Stan Getz. You know, very tortured, but brilliant. So this is a tribute to Tim Hardin, performed by Danny Krieger.
Oh, I got to figure out the key.
Yeah. York Young said he just had a chance to hang with you at Neon Prophet. Awesome musician and a great guy. I couldn't agree more.
Oh, man. If I listen long enough to you, I'd find a way to believe it's all true. Knowing that you lie straight-faced while I cry, still I look to find a reason to believe. Someone like you makes it hard to live without somebody else. Someone like you makes it easy to give, never thinking of myself. If I gave you time to change my mind, I'd find a way to leave the past behind. Knowing that you lie straight-faced while I cry, still I look to find a reason to believe.
Wow.
That's such a good tune.
No, I love it. You know, I mean, do you remember the last conversation you had with Tim? Or do you the last memory you had with him? I mean, you were not in a great place either, I guess.
I was living in a weird little apartment on Sweetser, I think it was in Hollywood, and he spent the night because his car was messed up, and I think we drank some tequila in the morning, and that's the last thing I remember.
Can you talk about how you learned dynamics on the bandstand, especially using your voice?
Well, you know, it's weird because I never thought of myself as a singer. I still, you know, I got a range of about 4 notes, and I had to sing to work because you start playing in bars and you got to have tunes. You know, people say, you know, what do you say to people that are starting? Or the main thing is play with other people. You got to play with other people to learn dynamics. You know, that was one thing that, you know, I'd been playing for 25 years when I started playing with Sam Taylor, but he showed me more about dynamics than anybody.
Well, can you give an example of a bandstand experience?
Yeah, just to build up to that place where everybody's sweating and dancing, and then go bam and bring it down to a whisper. You know, nothing gets...
From a whisper to a scream. Esther Phillips right there.
Just that kind of thing. Knowing, you know, does the band want to hear does the audience want to hear a slow tune now or a fast one? And you know, do we want to build this and keep it going? You know, or let's cut this one off. They're more into the swing than the shuffle thing.
Sure. Well, you got any good artist plays to the crowd, as Neil Casal told me. But I mean, could you talk about an opportunity earlier than Sam when you really honed your individual voice? Not necessarily what's coming out, your chops too. Or was it an unamplified setting? Because you talk to jazzers, you brought up Watrous, but even Mike Mainieri, I mean, they'd be on the bandstand. Your ears had to grow because you couldn't hear. You have to listen hard for that acoustic bass. There was no mic on that bass. You might have one mic for the whole thing. You know, so where did your ears grow the most on the bandstand?
You know, it's weird because ears are a weird thing.
We all have 2 of them, hopefully.
You know, I'm not a jazzer. I wish I could play jazz.
I'm not talking about.
I know, but when you're talking about ears, it's like for a long time I went with a woman that was a great jazz player, and I remember going to see this a quintet, and they're playing something, and she looked at me, and she goes, "Can you tell they're playing a blues?" And I was like, "No, I had no idea." And and then once she goes, "Here's one," and you know, it was like, "Oh yeah." But that's what I mean by ears. She heard that right away because she was used to that. It's like the joke of the guy that gets a gig with a Pakistani band, and he says, "I've never played this kind of music before." And the guy says, "It's very easy. I just need a strong backbeat on 3 and 17." And it's like, it's like Indian music. If you've been brought up in India, it seems natural to have these strange time signatures.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the ears is a weird thing. The band was a big thing about listening to the bass and the drums. Listening to the way they played.
You talking about Danko and Helm?
Yeah, I mean.
What was it about? Because also Garth was Garth the first cat to bring the? Was it McKendry? Who was the first cat to bring that organ into Toronto, Arkansas hillbilly rock? I mean, that was out of control.
Well, it was. I mean, when I think of Oregon, it's really weird. I remember went to one of these festivals. I used to go to festivals all the time.
Yeah.
And Hendrix was there, and Taj Mahal. But one of the great acts was Lee Michaels with Frosty.
R.I.P. dude.
And was organ and drums.
But then Frosty would do his drum solos too.
And then he'd throw the sticks away and play with his hands. It was ridiculous. But that's when I think, and Winwood, with Traffic, that was. But Garth was so unique, I mean, that whole, the band, I was like so many people back then, the band sort of turned me around the way the Beatles did.
Can you talk about, because I know the band had a huge impact on cats like the Grateful Dead, Working Man's Dead. I'm pretty sure they modeled that after Big Pink or one. Can you talk about specifically what the band, was it just the feel? I mean, Danko was a butcher. He came out, he was Levon was was actually a guitar player. But what was it about that turned you around?
The songs and the way they sang them. It wasn't Everly Brothers harmonies. It was one guy would come in a little bit after the other guy, and it just was so different sounding. And they all had unique, beautiful voices. And to me, I mean, the first two albums, and for me particularly the second album, the Brown album. The Brown album.
Oh man.
When You Awake. Who writes songs like that? I mean, that's just
Get Up Jake.
It was the songwriting. It was and that was, I was listening more to rhythm section than solos. I was getting away from the long, Wheels of Fire and getting into JJKL and
I did.
The Beatles are still my favorite. I think are the greatest band ever of all time, and it's because of the songs. It all comes down, or so much of it comes down to the songs.
I think they also gave the poetic license to a lot of cats to be themselves, too. Yeah. I mean, you look at everybody was influenced by them at that time when it was happening, and then Ringo came in as a total field drummer.
I'm in the middle of this book called Willin' about Little Feat. What's his name? Ben Fong. Oh, the guy that writes.
Kenny Gradney's tuning into this right now.
Oh man! Well, one of my favorite. I knew Paul Barrere. I haven't seen in 25 years. Wonderful cat. Not like we were good friends, but I knew him. Catfish Hodge was a friend of mine, and they ended up having a band together at one time.
Yeah.
The Blues Busters, I think, something like that. Anyway, great cat. But they, Little Feat. They don't sound anything like the Beatles, but the Beatles were. Lowell George talks about, he would write these songs with this guy, Kibbe, who changed his name for credit to Fred Martin so that the credits would read George Martin as like a tribute to the Beatles.
I did.
So,
Roy Estrada was in that group.
Roy's not doing too good these days.
Dude, could you play a tune, Little Feat or the band for the audience? People are craving, or a tune that you wrote that was inspired by those roots bands.
Okay.
Because like the Little Feat versions of Alan Toussaint tunes are ridiculous. God. Here we go.
All right,
why don't you tell the audience what you're going to do if you know what you're going to do?
I'm going to do a song of mine.
Good.
I don't know. I listened to a lot of Lowell George around the time I wrote it, I guess. Can't quite remember what you said before. You cocked your head and walked away. I cleaned the kitchen, then I mopped the floor. Took all kinds of time to pass some time away. But I waited up for you and let your candle burn return. You might return. I packed away the things you left behind. They're stacked up here against the wall. Those cornball phrases that you underlined rest in your books just down the hall. But I still wait up for you. So should you need a face or a place that feels like home, you won't be alone. I've grown accustomed to this great big bed. The sheets don't smell like you no more. But I'm bone weary from this pounding head that still hears your footsteps on my floor. 'Cause I still wait up for you. Windows open wide, so don't be shy. Climb back inside. Come back inside. I heard you left this town for parts unknown. A bashful, blushing bride. I'll be a sport. I won't bitch or moan. I've practiced keeping that inside. But I'm still waiting up for you. So should you need a face or a place that feels like home, you won't be alone. 'Cause I'll be home.
Danny Krieger, everybody. Live worldwide, baby. I mean, if you talk to peeps all over the world, you've had a lot of experiences. There have been lonely avenues. There have been high highs and low lows, like any musician. What are the most important qualities of leadership on the bandstand, according to Danny Krieger? Especially if you're looking to raise the collective consciousness of the audience.
Be nice. You know, it's kind of my philosophy about everything, you know.
What does that mean? Go deeper than that, though.
The golden rule: do unto others. You know, try and have empathy. Think about what if you want this guy to play something different than he's playing, don't say, don't play that, man. Play this. Say, you want to try this? Maybe this will work. You know, it's all about. You know, you can. A strong leader is fine. You know, somebody that's like, I'm the leader of the band, and ultimately what I say goes. You know, but if any band that's not dictatorial, you know, you're going to get input and be nice.
Do you bring people into when you've been a leader? Do you bring people in and let them do their thing?
Yeah, I'm a terrible leader, and I haven't really led very many bands. I really haven't. The bands that I led in name, I had a band called the Mambo Gigolos in L.A. with a wonderful, wonderful cat named John Juke Logan, bless his soul, who died a couple years ago.
He's left us now?
He left us, yeah. He did a lot of soundtrack work with Ry Cooder, did the harmonica stuff on the Roseanne show. Fabulous, great musician. And we had this great band with James Cruz, who was J.J. Cale's drummer, and Vito Sanfilippo, who was with Tower of Power. Anyway, I had to go and deal with the union, but on the bandstand it was more Juke's band. like to talk. I'm not good in front of a microphone. When I play with Steve Graham's my partner, he does all the talking. He's funnier than hell, and
You're
great.
pretty loquacious, man. I mean, we're having a ball.
Yeah, but I'm just looking at you. You know, if there were 7 people behind you, I'd be wanting a beer.
So you just play. You say what needs to be said. That was the other thing about the idea of talking to Ricky Marotta a while back. He was on the radio. He was talking about just talking to a cat, and the guitar player wanted to have a jam. He got a gig, and he said, "Let's play this gig." And Marotta's like, "I'll do it, but only if we cut the tunes down. I don't want to just be wanking it for 20 minutes. I want to play 20 tunes in 45 minutes." Mm-hmm. And so they go to rehearsal, and the guitar player's doing just fine. They're cutting the tunes down. Everyone's on the right page. Marotta said, "This is great." They show up for the gig, first tune. Guitar player goes off into the stratosphere, starts just wanking it for 20 minutes. And what it comes down to is, how quickly do you say what you need to say?
Yeah, I'm of two minds of this. I used to, I loved in the 60s. I saw Cream a number of times. I saw Hendrix, and I loved it when they went off and did 30 seconds of an intro and then played for an hour.
How much of that also was like Buddy Miles or Ginger Baker just taking it off rhythmically?
Yeah, I mean, now I don't think I like it very much.
Interesting. When you hear it now, what is it? What is it? Too disjointed or something?
It's weird what holds up and what doesn't hold up. Because
it's like a wine. It could get finer or not.
Well, it's weird. I'm this old fart that I try and listen to new stuff, and every once in a while I hear something that I like. But you go to my stereo, I'm listening to Ray Charles and Tom Waits and the band and the Beatles
and Freddie Green.
And Freddie Green, But as usual, I forgot what we were talking about.
It's okay. You know what? We got time for. We got people all over the country and the world just loving this. One more tune we got time for, so play your heart out, whatever you want.
One more tune, huh? Okay.
Joined here by Danny Krieger live on Powertalk. Please continue to bring the comments and shares and feeds in, but one of the cats that keeps the glue together in the old Pueblo. And your partner's in Italy now, Graham's, right? He's out.
Yeah, that lucky. Yeah,
SOB, yeah.
He had hand surgery. He got like stem cell surgery on his fingers.
This was not around back in the 70s, obviously.
No, and he's like old.
So he's getting feeling back in his fingers now.
I hope so, man. We have some gigs coming up. Yeah. He better.
When's he due back?
The 20-something.
Well, maybe we can have the two of you come in next time.
That'd be great.
All right, because I mean, you don't talk enough.
Oh, shut up.
Here we go, baby.
Okay.
Happy Thursday.
Listen to the rhythm of the falling rain, telling me just what a fool I've been. I wish that it would go and make me cry in vain and let me be alone again. The only girl I care about is gone away, looking for a brand new start. Little did she know that when she left that day, along with her she took my heart. Rain, please tell me now, does that seem fair? For her to steal my heart away when she don't care. I can't love another when my heart's somewhere far away. The only girl I care about is gone away, looking for a brand new start. Little did she know that when she left that day, along with her she took my heart.
You never answered the question.
I forgot.
No, the question is, before we go, and thank you so much for commenting on my excerpts that I transcribed from my interviews, but just tell me what you dig about the Jake Feinberg show.
I dig reading stuff about interesting people being asked the right questions. That's the thing, dude. You ask the right questions. It's like you know, so often I'm like, you've got that guy there. Why aren't you asking him about that? I don't usually do that with you. Once in a while, you know. But usually it's like, damn, that was, I know I should be somewhere, but I can't stop reading this.
Danny Krieger, when Grams comes back in and if he's feeling good, let's get you guys back in here as soon as possible. It was an honor to connect with you, and you kicked ass today, man. Thank you, brother.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
We'll see you all in a little bit.